Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as always, I'm going to date stamp this. It's year 5, blog 22, or in legacy numbers, it's blog number 230, and it's dated the 19th of July 2026. And I usually sort of like just do a general thing at the beginning, very, very brief. And it's always weather related. I think most people that now know realise that we're in the middle of a sort of heat spell in the UK. So it's been a bit of a better week than the week before. And what I mean by that is it hasn't consistently been over 30 degrees. And I will say this, outside, right? So what you have to understand about that is that consistently it's been hotter inside, and most of that air conditioning unit that I bought was for my mother. So that's used mostly to keep the room that she is permanently in cool. So when I'm working, I try to have the least amount of electrical equipment on, which means I have to have a monitor and I have to have my laptop on and certain things on charge. And that does help. But if you start to put other things on, this room gets really, really warm. And that's the uncomfortable thing. While I am sort of like uncomfortable with my back, anything that's irritable is elevated to awful levels, and I tend to find that I rock from side to side and get even hotter than I am. So it's been a better week, but it's still uncomfortable. I managed to get this room cooled down when my mother is finally going to sleep. Now, that with the summer has meant that she's going to sleep later. So sometimes it's gone 10 o'clock. From that point of view, I can only use the air conditioning unit for a maximum of an hour. And that's just to get the room cooled down enough so that I can sleep. And in the most part, that works. It's just a shame it is what it is. So really, the next mention of the weather really should be in the news, because it will be in the news. So we might as well, with that, get the news out the way. It's been a busy week, I would say, for politics. Up and down for sport, and sad news of people of my past that I've grown up watching in films and TV dying. So we'll start off at the top, shall we? The very first news article that came up when I was searching for the top UK news stories this week was incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham is shaping his senior leadership team this week. On Friday, at his lead speech, he confirmed digital ID will be scrapped. So that's the first thing that he's sort of like mentioned. So people that have watched this blog week by week will know that politics generally are at the top. It's just something that's in the newspapers, in the news stories, all of that sort of stuff, taking away disasters or lead stories of wars and things, deaths, that sort of stuff. So Andy Burnham was sort of like brought in as and mentioned as lead for Prime Minister, and he will be sworn in, I believe, on Monday, which means if you're watching TV on Monday from 10 o'clock in the morning, you will see nothing but Andy Burnham being sworn in. My sister and I sometimes talk about this. We think, like a lot of things, that, politicians can't be trusted. What does it actually mean? And it doesn't mean a great lot. We know this. And it's just, what will it mean having a new leader? Even the news has turned around and said it's something like the 12th leader in 10 years or even more, I think. I'm not quite sure of the exact numbers on that. I haven't really checked it. But just having another Labour leader just means that you're still under the Labour team. You've just got somebody with different goals, and depending on his goals, it will affect us. And this is where it comes into play. It does affect us, and that's why it's a lead story. I can't really say too much. I work in a government department. It does affect me. He will come in, and the shaping of that new team will mean we'll have possibly new chancellors and leads for defence, justice, and all the rest of the stuff, and so therefore it has a bearing. To us, though, the general public, it's going to mean possibly a different economy. It will probably have an effect on the economy short term while it's all embedded in. And it's happening at a time where Parliament does sort of like have holidays. So, he's coming in, he'll jump in, say all of this, and then Parliament will shut down for a short period of time. So we'll be in this instability that we've had, for longer periods of time, which is sort of semi what Keir Starmer was saying it's the wrong time for a leadership challenge. And possibly another big reason on why he finally accepted the inevitable and stepped down, because it's not going to do anything for the economy, and the economy was one of his big agendas. Not that he did much. So that's that politics out the way. There was another big story. The government has officially nationalised British Steel. That came in about midweek, possibly Thursday. What it basically means is that our steel industry has been on a decline for decades. And some of those steel industries were bought by the Chinese. They wanted to make it profitable and had decided to close the plants down when it wasn't. And they only gave it something like a year or so. That meant the government has crept in a market where it's not profitable because it's cheaper to import. They're saying now that they're going to change tariffs. This is a dangerous game, but I can understand the strategy in the fact that if you increase the tariffs for imports, then people may buy from us because we'll decrease that to sort of like alter the scales. But when you start altering the tariffs for imports, then those other countries that are now going, oh, that's unfair, suddenly start altering their tariffs on things that we buy in bulk from them. And it goes on and on and on. Just look at how the Trump administration has done all this. I don't see the UK doing anything extreme like that. But I understand that to salvage the steel industry, they've got to do something. And there was a big news article on this on the media news, the televised news, showing all the plants that have basically that are in administration or threat of closure or are profitable, and there wasn't one that was profitable. So the nationalisation means that they hope to turn that around, but just think how much that means to taxpayers. We'll be funding that and trying to get it profitable, and it will all be coming out of tax. So not a great story, is it? And the last one that was sort of political is that beginning in April 2027, high caffeine energy drinks will be banned for sale to under 16s. A good thing, I think. I'm not a big fan of energy drinks. I don't think there's enough medical done on them before they're sold. There could be people that don't know that they've got heart murmurs or anything, and they're taking these things. And what does caffeine do? Of course, it does all sorts of stuff to the body that will attack those defects in us and make things worse. But does that mean, therefore, that there'll be black market stuff? Does it mean that people under 16 will find another method to get their kick, if you see what I mean? Because a lot of energy drinks are bought because they want to stay awake longer or more energy to do whatever they need to do. And I don't remember. In fact, I can't remember when my mother stopped buying for the family Lucozade, which was our energy drink, if you see what I mean. My mother used to buy a bottle of Lucozade when I was ill. And I always remember it because the Lucozade at that particular point in time was in glass bottles, and it had this crinkly orange plastic sort of like around it. I wasn't quite sure why they did that, to be quite honest. It made it stand out on the shelves. But as soon as I was better, we didn't drink it. And I just remember it being incredibly sweet. And, I went back then to drinking whatever it was that was in the house after I felt better. So that's about energy drinks. I don't have too much more to say about it other than that, which is why the next story is the next thing that's on most people's mind, which is the weather. And it's stated in the news article, the heat wave continues, with most of the UK getting up to 30-degree temperatures for over four of the 7-day week. So what that basically means is for the majority of the UK, certain areas, and I will stress this, it wasn't all of them, got consistently 30-degree temperatures for more of the week than there is, so 4 out of 7. And of course, it then is pretty unbearable when you're into a second week of this. And of course, when I look outside and I look at the garden, it's just a mess. I spent a couple of months ago for my mother a lot of money on plants, potted them, watered them, all of that sort of stuff. And then we got a heat wave. We're in what they call the third heat wave. And the grass is just like straw. It's yellow. The plants, because of the hose pipe bans, are done with a watering can. I've tried to use different methods. One particular method is using the water that comes out of your tumble dryer and using that water, because it could be okay, but it does have awful sort of impurities in it. So I didn't use that method after a while. So I think I did it twice and then I stopped. So then I had to just use watering can. I haven't washed my car. It must be in 2 months. It's covered in sap. I need to do something about it. But again, it's difficult with a bad back. So these are sort of like the things that are going on all the time, because we need the water for my mother. There's the washing, there's the keeping her clean, there's the washing machine. And so with water as expensive as it is, because we use Thames water, I've got to keep those bills low as possible. So, water, just like electricity and gas, is prominently on our minds. Do you know what I mean? So even to keep the energy bills down, I've tended to not put the tumble dryer on for long periods of time. And then I've dropped the temperature of the house down very low and turned all the radiators off, bar 2, and kept those on a power of 1 to put towels and flannels on there to dry, because it worked out cheaper doing it. We haven't got one of those tumble dryers that doesn't extract the water. It's what do they call them? Convex tumble dryers. So yeah, it's all these sort of battles that are going on at the moment, and that all comes from the heat. So there we are with that. Now, when it comes to the sport, a couple of good news and sort of bad news stories, because it was all very exciting that after the Mexico game that we mentioned in the last blog, they were going into a game against Argentina. And oh my God, wasn't the news full of every day the training camps and what this will possibly mean, security and everything else. And that's because of our history with Argentina. Many of people my age will remember the Falklands War. Many of my age as well will recognise our meetings in World Cups. I mentioned last week, although I got the year wrong, I think it was 1980. Is in the 1980s that Maradona, who was the player for Argentina in the World Cup, did what they called the hand of God. He leapt up into the air to header the ball over our goalkeeper, which was, I think, Peter Shilton at the time, and basically scored the goal that turned the whole match around. He lifted his arm, it touched his arm, it's a handball, but it was counted as a goal. There was no VAR at the time, so that was it, and it turned the whole thing around. So this particular match was being scrutinised a lot, and the match came around, and just the first 45 minutes really proved to me what this game was going to be. In the first 25 minutes of this game, which is done in these sort of like modules of 25 minutes, because in this World Cup there is what they call hydration breaks, which you don't get in normal football, but it's to do with the heat and all of that sort of stuff. In the first, therefore, 25 minutes of the game, Argentina had been booked for 10 fouls and England 7. And it therefore was a stop-start fouling mess that was not fun to watch. I mean, I'm pretty sure across the country, a lot of people were going fouling gits and all of this sort of stuff. And quite right, because for the most part, England were targeting, Argentina were targeting the England players that were the most threat. So Billingham was being targeted, Kane was being targeted, all of that sort of stuff. And they were pushing them, pulling on their shirt sleeves, anything that they could do to stop this game. And that's not football to me. So, and I do stress that, to me. And so we got really through the first half 0-0. And when the commentary came up, they just said England did well to keep things calm, but it's a mess. So come the second half, what happened was in the first about 10 minutes, I think, might have been 15. I would say just after 10 minutes, we scored our first goal. And this has an effect on me because I can look at it like this. Oh my God, we've scored, great, we're in the lead, and they've got to score 2 to beat us, right? That's great, okay? But the other one is, if you score too early, they're going to press like mad. Absolutely go ballistic, okay? Now, they could go down a fouling route. Well, this is where the problem lies. We've got a new manager that's been in now for 18 months. And he's been paid a lot of money to turn the fortunes of England around and get rid of England's mentality of how they play football in big tournament games. Now, under Gareth Southgate, who turned the game around for us, you know, that we hadn't been in semi-finals and so forth for quite a few years, right? He got us to the semi-finals, but he went as soon as the same thing happened, he went defensive. So what did this guy do? Took all the strikers off virtually. Not really, but he took midfielders off and replaced them with defenders. That meant for nearly 35 minutes, Argentina were always in the England half and pressed, crossed ball after crossed ball into the area to score. And I think it was 10 minutes from the end, they scored. So it made it an equaliser. 5 minutes after that, they were in the lead. And there was therefore only 5 minutes left in extra time. And you've got no midfielders and not enough, therefore, to get England up the other end to score. And that's because our manager went defensive. That is not changing the fortunes around for England and is not going to help with changing the mentality of getting us further up in these tournaments. So they scored 2 goals. We had scored 1. We, in the last 5 minutes, managed to press a little, and it wasn't enough, and we were out. And oh my God, that after that, and we were knocked out, it was inundated with this was a management problem, and that this manager has not done what he said he was going to do. Now, you can look at it and go, bit harsh. Losing 1 game out of all of those games that they played, it's a bit harsh. But that's what he's paid a lot of money for, and it's what these players are paid a lot of money for. Egos, put them to one side. What that guy should have done, what that manager should have done, Tuchel, I think his name is press, get a second goal. It was a fantastic first goal. It came from a guy called Gordon, who I've been very impressed with through this tournament. He's so fast and nippy. Absolutely great. There have been other decisions that I haven't enjoyed. I mean, we've got a great player in someone called Rice, and he's great at crossing, but he's been pretty much unhealthy all the way through this tournament. But we need midfielders, wingers, and he's our lead. So every time a game started, he was there. So, you know, there were times where I was going, he should have started bringing in some of these other players. And the reason I'm talking like this is because when we were knocked out, the news was full of where the mistakes were, but it also showed another bad side of football, and that was these slogans that were going on in the stadium. And Argentinian got onto the pitch and they put up banners about giving the Falkland Islands back and all of this sort of stuff. Don't need it in sport, but they obviously show it as a protest. But it's also banned by FIFA, the governing body, and I have no idea what's going to happen with this, because who do you fine? So I dare say they'll fine the Argentinian squad, and that'll be the end of that. But they got their message across. We didn't put up any banners. We didn't do any of that. We clapped and gave our interviews and all of that sort of stuff. They needed to do this. They said, I think there was an article that said they did it in honor of the dead, right? Well, we had dead on our side as well. Do you see what I mean? It's political, and this is where I'm saying I hate politics. It's just bloody awful. And therefore, the World Cup final is tonight, and it's between, is it Spain? I've forgotten who the other team is now. Well, Spain and Argentina, isn't it? That's right. And my, being British, I'll be fully behind Spain if I was that interested, which I'm not. So that meant that there is a sort of like match that is there for fun, I suppose, really, although it should be probably a lot more prominent than it is, to play for third place. So the two losers of the semi-final play in an extra game that is played one day before the final. And that meant that England had one more game to play, and that was against France. And this was on last night. And what a match. Now, this is a match that I watched, thoroughly enjoyed, right? Even if, there were heart-stopping moments, right? That you could enjoy. And it's because, what are you playing for, really, other than for third? So what if you come fourth? Do you know what I mean? History will only show what the final was. So we went into that game. We had many of our main players not even playing, which was a bit weird because both Billingham and Kane, which are strikers, were up for what they call the Golden Boot, which is the player that scored the most goals through the whole of the tournament. So if they're not playing, they can't do that. They push themselves out. Okay. So we brought out a team, and there were so many players on there that never even played in any of the other games. Or if they did, they played for minutes. You know what I mean? And in the first half, no word of a lie, England scored 4 goals, France scored none. And everybody was going, oh my God, what's happened to France? But come the second half, here we go. And they have they had a mentality, and it wasn't very long before they'd clawed 3 goals back. Now, I won't bore you with it all, but England won in the end, and it was a pretty high scoring game. I won't give you the score because just in case anybody is watching this that wants to recap the game. But we came away with our bronze medals. Everybody, including all the commentators, were delighted, talking about what the change was, contemplating on why wasn't it like that in the Argentinian game, which is a bit silly because we obviously were on the front foot for that game. He went defensive. That was it's in other words, you could look at it as a moment of madness. 35 minutes that changed England's fortunes. And they didn't lose by a great amount. It was 2-1. Do you see what I mean? So, but we shouldn't have been in this match that was played before this final. But what an enjoyable game it was. I came away going, wow, that was probably one of the best games that I saw out of all of the tournament games. And I did see more than just the England games, because I was watching it with my mum. Now, my mum could only watch the first half because of how late it is at night. But she was enjoying it. I could see that on her face. So that was good. And that's the end of the football, really. The tournament ends tonight. And things go back to normal. The England squad will have a little bit of a holiday before they have to start playing for their clubs again. And this is where a lot of commentators have only just really started mentioning this, that fatigue, mental strength, all of that sort of stuff, it's a lot. Because as soon as they'd finished playing for their club, they were training for the squad to play in this tournament. And now there's 3-4 weeks and they'll be back playing for their clubs. So they've got next to nothing holiday wise, but they're paid a lot of money. So I'm not saying anything about it. They're mostly prima donnas as far as I'm concerned. Some of these players, they play one game and they could buy my house in 1 week's wages. And that's got to be wrong on so many levels. You know, my dad loved the game when the likes of the Charltons and Bobby Moore and Nobby Stiles and Greavesy and all of that sort of stuff were playing, because they still had day jobs while they were playing football. They weren't playing big amounts of money. I think their egos were under control for the most part. So there you go. Enough about that sport. Do we really care? Not too much. And the last good news story was another sporting one. And this is a guy called Josh Kerr, who I don't know too much about because I don't watch too much athletics. But he broke a 27-year-old men's mile world record this week. I think it was yesterday. Fantastic. I've watched, like Chariots of Fire and that, all about athletics, running in particular. We've all seen that they tried to shave seconds off of the 100 meters, 400, 800, and of course the mile. So the mile one is a record that's been standing for 27 years. Is a huge achievement. I don't know how many fractions of a second he did it in, but absolutely fantastic good news story. So that's brilliant. And the last part of the news really is where which usually creeps in, is just when there are deaths. And there's been a few deaths recently. There was another actress that died as well this week. But I just want to concentrate on this one, and that is Sam Neill. He died, or his announcement was mentioned on Monday. He died at the age of 78 from pneumonia. Now, there's been lots of heartfelt stories and comments from celebrities and all of that sort of stuff saying what a great guy he was. And I could sort of like tell that just by looking at his career. Most people will really know him from Jurassic Park, but I've seen him in lots of things. So I saw him in Damien Free, the Omen Free, should I say. He was Damien in that. When I was watching TV, he was in a miniseries called Cain and Abel. And a lot of people will probably know that from the book, but miniseries were big on TV when I was watching in the 70s, 80s, early 90s. Cain and Abel was one of those ones that was very big. Like Jewel in the Crown and a lot of others. And I remember seeing him there. He'll be remembered for lots of films. This week alone, I've watched Jurassic Park and Event Horizon. Just recently, I got the steelbook of The Hunt for Red October, and he's in that. He was also in The Piano and Dead Calm. Dead Calm is a great film. If you haven't seen that, go and watch that. And it's, when it comes to TV work, because most film actors back in the past didn't do much TV, but that shift changed in the 2000s. And he appeared in a sort of historical type drama that I liked called The Tudors, probably because I love all that period of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I and all of that sort of stuff. So he was in that. He was also in Peaky Blinders. Unfortunately, I never really got into Peaky Blinders. I did watch the first couple of seasons, but it wasn't really something that I watched an awful lot of, probably because there was an awful lot when that was coming out of mobster mentality in films and TV. So another one really didn't scratch that itch for me. But he died of pneumonia. The family insisted it wasn't to do with the cancer. He was an actor that had a cancer scare, had a lot of chemotherapy, had an all clear, and basically that's what most people will think, that's what he died from, when actually what chemotherapy does is knock your immune system bandy. And if you've got pneumonia, that's it. You know, your immune system is not going to be able to fight that very well. And that's why it was such a shock, because he had been given the all clear. He was in a few films. I think he'd done back-to-back films this year. I think the article said that he was in 3 or 4 that are going to be shown. And from that point of view, it's therefore we're down to the last remnants of being able to see what a great actor he was. So yeah, it was very sad to hear of Sam Neill's passing. And you know, what else can I say other than my childhood just keeps shrinking? So that's the news out the way. And when it comes to me, there's not much to say, because when it comes to work and me, I extended my hours in my phased return. I worked to nearly an hour of a full day. So if you count in a lunchtime, I work to over 3 o'clock, because I work, supposed to work 8 till 4, but I start at 7. Okay. So I finished at 2:30 with no lunch, which would make it 3:30. So you can see I worked a lot longer. And next week, the introduction is for me to work the full 8 hours with a lunch hour inside there, which means that we're going to be going back to a routine that I've had all the way through my mum's health problems, which means I'll have my lunch at 1. I've got to try and get my walk in. I've got to try and help with, you know, changing my mother and all of that sort of stuff. The starting at 7 o'clock means that I'm starting earlier than I ever did, and finishing at 4 is where I always finished. So it's going to be, this is why I didn't have the lunch this week. I had more breaks, because I needed to sort of like build up a little bit of endurance, because I am still uncomfortable. I am still waiting for a chair that's better than this one. And all of that sort of stuff is held up by purchasing what's the best chair to get and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm not still in a great place. I'm still using this same chair, and it's still not adequate enough, really. And next week we'll be going back to normal in a way. When it comes to my mum, there's been a few little things. Just purely the breathing we're a bit concerned with, but that's under control. We're making phone calls to the GPs, because the tablets that they gave us to try and get rid of this wheezing and sort of like crackle out the way has not succeeded. It's helped in a way, but not to a great extent. But the heat has still been with us, and it could be that's causing some of the issues. So we've just tried to keep my mum as comfortable as possible, and like anything, all our concentration, my sister and I's, is on that. Do you see what I mean? So there isn't really much to talk about this week when it comes to my mum, when it comes to my work and me, because everything is as normal. Look after my mum, make sure my mum's comfortable, keep an eye on my mum, do the normal as best as you can work-wise, and that's all you can say about it all. The rest is all just what happened this week, and for the most part I can't remember a problem. There's some funny moments. I remember I went over the road to get my mum an ice cream. I thought, I'll get my mum an ice cream, might cool her down, and of course, you know, it melts, doesn't it? So it can go over your clothes. So you have a sort of like a bit of a laugh with that, because you can put sort of like tea towels around her, or sort of like tissues in a hope. But there'll always be that one little drop of chocolate that will land, and it will leave a mark, and you then got to use stain removers before you put it into the washing machine and all of that sort of stuff. And you just laugh at it now. You just go, oh, another little job. Oh, well. Trying to do all the jobs and trying to keep the garden watered and all of that sort of stuff is a challenge if you're working later during the day. So I've found that my evenings have got less time available to me and more of me rushing around than ever before. But that just means I have to become more efficient. So right now, starting this week, I need to look at that and basically make sure that I'm as efficient as possible, and go from there. There was another little story which is a bit uncomfortable to talk about, really, but it's about the stray cat. Now, we've had this stray cat called Tommy. He comes into our house, and he's been coming here since my dad was alive. And we kept allowing him to come into the house and all of that sort of stuff. And I swear this cat's probably got many homes. But he's always in the garden. He always comes in. We feed him and all of that sort of stuff. But it does beg the question, does his real owner do anything? Because we started to get flea bites on our legs. And I remember last week I talked about this. We had to buy flea powder and all of that sort of stuff. And what that basically meant is that we then had to spend more money on things like flea powder, flea treatments for the cat, and antihistamines and creams for ourselves. And therefore, more hoovering is needed, more work to do the flea powder, and then a question mark on, can the cat come in or not? And I had this routine at the beginning of the week. We put the droplets on the back of its neck because it won't hurt. But this stuff's expensive, by the way. But we don't want the cat to be suffering either. And I made it so that the cat came in, had its food, and then went out again without ever going into my mum's room. So I shut my mum's living room, sort of like followed him in to get to his food dishes, and then followed him out again. And he must be thinking, do you not like me anymore? This cat must be thinking this. But he still comes in and he's still in the garden, so I think he still recognises he's okay. And the good news is from about Thursday, my sister hasn't had any more bites. And we continue to take antihistamines and all of that sort of stuff. And my mother's not had one bite, so he must have done a pretty good job, to be quite honest. But that's some of the little issues that we continue to have, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Tom is a lovely cat. He lets me pick him up now and stroke him and all of that sort of stuff. But when these things occur, fleas, ticks, all of that sort of stuff, nightmare. Absolute nightmare, because you just want to swear at the cat all the time. Go away, you flea bag little you know what I mean? That sort of thing. So that's all I can say, and that's all about that for me at the moment. So I'm just going to now just wash my face and everything, get myself more comfortable, and then I'll be back, and we'll be talking about the shout-outs and what your comments have been this week. So for you, it'll be seconds. Won't be long. And I'm back, and we get to the sort of like big bulk of my sort of like diary that I do. And it's always the fun part, which is the shout outs and the comments, etc. And just want to say a big thank you to everybody that watches this. But there's regulars here that try to leave a comment every week, and a big thank you and a shout out to them, which is why I try to read all the comments out regardless of what's there. I have noticed though over the last couple of weeks I've mentioned stuff and it's just said placeholder or whatever. Maybe I need to relook at those, because if they're not saying anything in particular then that raises a question or something, then maybe it's not, it would shorten this diary a little bit to not mention those. But I feel I want to, and the reason for that is these people, as I've said many times before, have looked at something and then gone, oh, I'm, you know, Del Boy's come into my mind, you know, this week, and I want to sort of like say something. So, you know, there is that. And of course, some of them also have their own channels and it promotes those. And I'm very big on collaboration. I want people to succeed. You know, they've given me so much joy. Why not read that out? So big thank you to all of those. And I'll just quickly mention the ones that have got comments this week, no matter how small. And they are Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Wee Bob Art, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, Martroid, Denny, Roberts Retro Gaming, and Carl Todd. And like I say, each of those must have just gone, oh, he's come into my mind today. I'll definitely say something. And there was something in that I want to mention my own feelings and thoughts on. To all of those, fantastic. To all of those that watched, just thank you so much as well. So we'll move, therefore, straight into comments. And they're in no particular order, as always. So the very top one that's listed today that I'm looking at the moment is Robert's Retro Gaming, which you know I'll be talking about later on because he's got his own channel. And he's put, "Hi Del, I watched your blog on Sunday and Monday and never felt the urge to comment on anything in particular. That's not a knock on you. I just don't have anything to add. I enjoyed it as usual. So all my best to you and your mum and family." And that's where I'm saying, fantastic. You watched it. You therefore had no adverse comment to say in regards to anything that was said. What more can you say about it? And if you don't have a question or a comment, and you know, then really what you're saying here is best to you and best to all of the things that you're going through at the moment, and especially to your mum and the others that are also trying to help my mum. So, you know, that's, like I say, one of the reasons why you read these things out. So thank you very much, Robert. Salute to you, and thank you. Absolutely marvellous. And we move on now to Wee Bob Art, who's got his own channel as well, and is a good friend of mine, and I watch his channel, and we chat in certain other collaborations that I do, in particular Ian Hill, The Ramblings. And let's see what he's put. He said, "I've enjoyed watching along. I have been getting back into gaming, hence my lack of comments recently. Don't blame you on that. I bought a PS5 Premium and can now play without overly feeling sick, which is good." And that's against the grain, really, because most people are shunning Sony and the PlayStation brand at the moment. But I hope you have some great fun with that. Why not enjoy something just because this is happening? There's still a huge back catalogue of stuff that you could be playing on that console, so good for you. Anyway, I hope you and your mum are doing well. Question for next time: if you were to recommend any 4K release title to show off sound, which would they be? Doesn't need to be a top 5 or anything, just ones that you may have watched and the sound effects or track were just amazing with Dolby Atmos or similar. I am looking to purchase some discs to push my sound system, specifically Dolby Atmos, so I'm interested in your thoughts. Thanks, and all the best to you and your family. What a great question, and one that's debated a hell of a lot on YouTube. You can't move the people that say, what is a reference 4K disc? What is a great disc for sound? What is a great one for picture? What is an all-rounder? What are ones to avoid, etc., etc. And the problem with it is there are so many different players, so many different speakers, so many different sound systems, and so many different TVs or projectors that you're not going to get the same effect with it all. And I've always looked at it as well that there is banding across this sort of like question, because there was no Dolby Atmos in the 90s, 80s, 70s. So those have been upmixed. Yeah. And then there are ones that are pure made with Dolby Atmos in particular. And then there are ones that don't have that, but DTS and Dolby Digital are just as good. Because what you have to think about here is, what is the use of sound? I've mentioned this a number of times in my conversations with Ian, that a sound like effects and soundtrack can make or break a film. It can be so jarring that you just go, what a load of rubbish. You know what I mean? Nearly swore then, but I didn't. And from that point of view, you could have something with exceptional sound, but not so good in regards to the film itself. Yeah. So you've got to take all of that into consideration. And then there are ones that people say the reference disc. And the reference disc is where it's exceptional across the board. Not necessarily the story of the film, but picture and sound 90%. And then the other 10% for the rest. So it's a very difficult one to talk about, because the other thing is, I'm not a big fan of sound bars, but they are so much better now. And for people on a budget, can be absolutely great. And there's Sonos and Denon and all sorts of different manufacturers out there that are making these what I consider to be the budget end. But you can also get sound bars that supersede an actual receiver. So, but they're only ever going to be, it's like cameras, only ever going to be as good as the lenses for cameras. So only as good as the speakers. Now, I have an Atmos system, and I had it for a long period of time with no Atmos speakers. And that's because of the cost of them. Yeah. And then there are things like passive and non-passive subwoofers and all of that sort of stuff. It's a complex area, and it's because not only is the sound shooting towards you and back, you've also got them raised going up. Yeah. So they shoot up and bounce off the sound off the ceiling and then towards you, encapsulating that sound around you. And that's why headsets I'm not a big fan of. You can't have directional like that so close to your ears. Your ears pick it up because of how sound is manipulated through the air, and it hits your ear canal. So yeah, this one's going to be a tricky one, and I dare say some of these titles are not going to be sort of like unheard of. And yawn. And then there's going to be ones that will turn around and say, why didn't you mention this one? And it's not because I think that they're bad. It's just sometimes there are reasons that I'll say something, and it'll be because it's personal to me. So think of this list as always personal to me with my equipment. And that is a Panasonic OLED TV, a Denon Atmos receiver. I've forgotten who my speakers are by. I know that they cost, when I bought them, over $1,000. So I can't remember what they are. So there's the receiver, there's the speakers, and there's the screen that I use. And of course I use a Panasonic when I'm demonstrating my reference discs, a Panasonic 9000 player, but my 820 is equally to the point with those. I also have my sound going out on a separate HDMI channel. So I've got one that goes to the TV for picture, one that goes to the receiver for sound. And if I don't have the receiver on, then of course the picture and the sound come out through the telly. But that's rare. That's usually when I'm watching something from Sky or something. I will just have that set up. So yeah, it goes like that. So what would I, and these are going to be in no particular order, and I'll try and mention the reason maybe for some of them. One that blew my mind when it came out, and I think it did for many, was Top Gun Maverick. Now, the story behind Top Gun Maverick is worthy of a film by itself, but they used specialist cameras for all the flight sequences, and they didn't scrimp on the sound. So you can imagine it's full of sound of the jets flying through the air, the soundtrack, which has got many highlights in regards to individual songs and the score itself. And of course, like I say, the sound effects, because it's a war sort of like jet related film, is therefore absolutely fantastic, and it therefore utilizes sound very, very well. It was, again, and this will crop up quite a bit, an IMAX, shown at an IMAX theatre, and was made in the era where Atmos was now a standard. So it really is a reference disc. If I could mention reference discs, I'd say that one was one. So there's that. And then there is going towards the I like it anyway, but that doesn't take away from its qualities, and that's Blade Runner 2049. The picture on this was good anyway, and the story exceptional if you're a big Blade Runner fan. But the use of the sound, Blade Runner 2049, it's got so many little bits that stand out. You know, some people on YouTube may even turn around and say, you buy this disc for this one scene or whatever. Blade Runner 2049 doesn't have that, because it has it all the way through the film, because there are scenes where you're on terra firma, just walking around and in rooms and all of that sort of stuff, and then you've got the many aspects of the action scenes, like the water rushing in when they crash land in water, and the flight sequences, and the fight scene in the Las Vegas type casino hotel. All of that, plus all the explosions, just gives your speakers a workout. And a lot of these that I'm going to mention will do exactly the same. And that's going to be the same for Dune 1 and 2. Everybody's looking now towards Dune 3. But Dune 1 and 2, wow. I've put those films on more times than I care to remember, just so that I can relive those experiences I got when I first played it the first time, because it blew me away. It was like, oh wow. Like this year, Project Hail Mary is one that I can't wait to get in physical media. And then there's Gravity, and Gravity, again, the film, gets knocked an awful lot. And the reason for that is because when you're talking about space films, sound is, well, you're in a vacuum, aren't you? Sound wouldn't work the way that it does. And in the film, most of it is speaking through while you're in a spacesuit with a helmet on. And the rest of the sound you wouldn't hear. But this came out with an Atmos track on Blu-ray, and was always commented on about the sound, but it sold out really, really quickly, if I remember rightly. I bought it on Blu-ray, but the first time I did it, I don't think it had the Atmos soundtrack, and I didn't have an Atmos sound system either at the time. But when it came out on 4K, I purposely went, I've got to have that. And so I put my name down and I got it, and I'm so glad I did. So Gravity is another one. And you'll remember at the beginning of this, I said there's a marriage of soundtrack, standard music, you know, like pop music and all of that sort of stuff, visuals, all of that sort of stuff. So Baby Driver's got to be mentioned, because that has an exceptional score and music, and it fits in so well into the film. And it's a driving film, so there's lots of sort of not like car chases per se, but lots of moments in the car, outside the car, all of that sort of stuff. And it's intermixed with this pop music, and it never distracts. That's the thing. It doesn't distract. And from that point of view, I am immersed. And if I am immersed, it then becomes a favourite. And there you go with that one. And then you've got sort of like other science fiction type films. There's a lot of the Godzilla versus Kong films, but I would say that they're all superseded by Godzilla -1. That really did rock my subwoofer, Godzilla -1. I remember that. And it's an exceptional film, and it sold out very, very quickly. I think you can still just about get it if you look around. Don't pay scalpers prices, though, for it. This is the thing. Don't do that fear of missing out with any of this stuff that I'm mentioning, because most of them are going to be part of a trilogy or something, and then be released in a box set. You're going to get the same sort of like disc then. So unless you're a completist where you want them all individually and in their individual cases, fear of missing out shouldn't really be something that you ought to be concerning yourself with. But the biggest use of sound is always probably, from my point of view, going to be the war film. Now, the one that blew me away, because I bought these Vault type films. They came in £50 boxes with little LED crystal statuettes and art cards and all of that sort of stuff in big packaging. And the one that blew me away at that time was 1917. There's shots, bullets that go over your head, along with the explosions at ground level and planes coming in and all of that sort of stuff. It blew me away. I just went, wow, is every war film going to be like this? And to be quite honest, I would say you're in a good ballpark figure for buying any war film. Really, you're going to get a pretty good score. There's going to be exceptions, like anything, but war films really do well. Which is why, when it comes to sort of like honorary mentions, there'll be quite a few war films. One of them will be Hacksaw Ridge. Another one will be Saving Private Ryan. Now, Hacksaw Ridge is one of those ones on the cusp of Dolby Atmos, and Saving Private Ryan is definitely when no Dolby Atmos was around, and you had just Dolby DTS and DD. So you have to ask yourself, should they therefore be in something that says about exceptional sound and reference quality? Well, you can actually upmix something and get a good result. Saving Private Ryan, along with Hacksaw Ridge and another one, Midway, are all going to be sort of like mentioned, but they're going to have mixy type results because maybe the picture isn't quite that good. Or something will be jarring in it, or the story is bad. Midway is possibly one that gets a bad rep, really, but actually it's not that bad. And then there are, ones that the sound is just going to immerse you, and it's going to enhance your experience of the film. What do I mean by that? Well, you've got Star Wars Rogue One. I mean, how can you not like lightsaber battles and TIE fighters and X-Wings all flying around you and all of that sort of stuff? And Rogue One is a great story, which is why I won't mention things like Star Wars Episode 1 or maybe the originals in this, because some of them have commented in regards to the picture quality or whatever it is. But if I was to mention one that you should buy in your Star Wars universe, then I would say Rogue One would be the one. Interstellar is always a great film, right? I bought that in a expensive box set. it's not even a box. It's more like a opening of a gatefold type thing. But I remember it cost me nearly 80 quid when I bought it. And that's because I just love the film Interstellar. And Interstellar is another one of those ones where I truly believe this, that the picture is exceptional if you go to the cinema in IMAX, because I have seen that in IMAX. But it's not that exceptional in regards to 4K. And some people are going to lambast me with that. But I do believe that there are certain scenes that aren't. But sound-wise, yeah. I even like the score in that one. I bought that separately, the score to Interstellar. As I did another film, The Batman. That's another one that's got some fantastic chase sequences. And scenes in things like churches and stuff that really give your speakers a bit of a workout. But they're not all the way through the same, which is why I mention those. If you're buying an action sequence thing, most people will probably turn around to the Mission Impossible films, but I will put the John Wick films above those. The John Wick ones have got so much action and smashing glass in particular that really immerse you in the sound and does not jar you one bit. In fact, the only thing I can say about the John Wick action sequences is that they're very disjointed. They ebb and flow, you know, that makes it really sometimes head spinny moments. Like, wow, I couldn't follow that fight sequences. It was just all over. My God. But when they slow the action down a little bit and all the shots are being fired and glass is breaking around you, there are some stunning moments. So John Wick would be in the action sort of like sequence there. And if I go back to early films where I'm talking about utilization, right, of sound, when my friend Mainmeister came to my house when we were going to a Zap event, and he brought his friend along with him, who sadly died this year, upset me a great deal. When I heard that, he wanted me to demonstrate my equipment. And back in the old days, I had one particular film that I always showed. And that's because I wasn't going to show the whole film. It was just the beginning, right? The very start of the film. And that film to me was Superman the movie. Now, the reason for that is if you really want to tell how sound can go from back to front and front to back, watch the opening title sequence of Superman, right? No word of a lie. Have you got one of the most best sound themes you'll ever have in the Superman March, which I think is exceptional. But you've got that iconic opening sequence of the credits shooting towards you, passing past your ears and shooting off into the distance in the back. And I put, therefore, Superman on. And this was it was released in, I think, 2018, but there are later versions. But my 2018 version used DTS. And oh my God, that opening sequence is just exceptional, because not only is the sound going from front to back, but you've also got the Superman stamp, which is the symbol, and then the bang noise when it comes into place. And that explosion, when it hits, that subwoofer, I tell you what, brings to life. I mean, it springs to life. Amazing. You can feel air coming out of the speaker of your subwoofer with that stamp where the Superman symbol appears. So absolutely fantastic. And from a cartoon point of view, I don't have that many animated ones, but I would recommend Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's got some great moments in there, but there are many moments where this is where it works. The soundtrack is great throughout, don't get me wrong. But there are scenes where Miles Morales is in his room. He's on the ceiling. He's in his room normal. All of that sort of stuff. But he will then have to leave his little apartment, his little corner place apartment, jump out and then go through the city. And the sound when that occurs is just French kiss. Do you know what I mean? It's absolutely amazing. And there are many moments like that in that film, but it's not a reference quality disc. It's just one that I personally state. And that'll go for, I think, my last three. And two of them are car chases. And that will be Ford versus Ferrari and Gran Turismo. Gran Turismo is not a great film. But from an engine and car chase type of sequence, great. And your speakers, again, are going to get an exercise. Same with Ford versus Ferrari. It's the trouble with Ford versus Ferrari, there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of just talking and all of that sort of stuff. And from that point of view, it doesn't excel. You know what I mean? But when the racing occurs, oh, wow. That's when it hits you. And that can be said for my last choice, which is another science fiction film, and that is Edge of Tomorrow. I loved Edge of Tomorrow. Thought it was a great film. I wasn't that impressed with the Blu-ray when it came out. But when I upgraded to the 4K version, wow, did they do an exceptional job with the sound on this. It is an alien invasion, timey-wimey film, but it's got so many little action sequences, a lot like Starship Troopers and things like that, that make that the Starship Troopers of the Atmos range. If you see what I mean? Some people will say, well, why don't you mention just Starship Troopers then? It's because I think Edge of Tomorrow pips it on so many levels. I've probably watched Starship Troopers so many times that I could recite the dialogue. Edge of Tomorrow less. And so Edge of Tomorrow is more in my mind as a exceptional over Starship Troopers, because the buzz and excitement that I've got is less so with that film now that I've seen it so many times. You know, in many ways, the same way that is when I'm talking about Total Recall or RoboCop or any of those. They're great films. Some of them are great pictures, some of them are great sound, all of that sort of stuff. And you might ask yourself why I haven't put really any James Cameron films in. They're mixed, because some people will lambast you and turn around and say, how can you like that AI washed out nonsense, etc., etc. And so others will turn around and say, absolutely exceptional, my God, look at that, Titanic, blah, 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 blah. And the reason I haven't mentioned Titanic, by the way, is I know that there's a mastering issue on my version, and when I tried to get a replacement disc, I heard next to nothing from Paramount. I think it was Paramount. Yeah, I'm pretty sure about it. And so I'm stuck with something that comes on 2 discs that I know has got a mastering issue. And I paid an awful lot of money for its anniversary edition in a box set. So, yeah, that one leaves a sour taste in your mind. But maybe I've mentioned too much here. Maybe I haven't gone in enough detail. I don't know. But those are ones that I put on myself. You know, I mean, there are other films that I'll put on, like 2001 and Star Trek The Motion Picture and Back to the Future, and they all have their reasons for me to play it. But you've got to remember that the film has got to utilize the sound correctly and to make it work. And things like bullets going over the top in war films, car chase scenes, screeching of tires inside the car where it becomes muffled with the engine noise, sharp when it's outside, all of that sort of stuff, that's the correct use of sound, and therefore your speakers need to do the same, and therefore your equipment needs to utilize that. So yeah, I think I've given some good stuff there. Thank you so much, wee Bob, and I hope you've enjoyed me rambling on about stuff that other people are probably just falling asleep to now. I have to say, but I hope it helps. I so want to hear your thoughts now. If you buy any of those discs because you haven't got them, what your thoughts were, and whether you thought I was bang out of order for even mentioning them. Don't know. And maybe those meet what other YouTubers are saying. I'm not going to surprise you, but I doubt that many people will be mentioning things like 1917, Superman, that sort of stuff. Too old. Won't even be mentioning them, which is a shame, because you can get some great feelings out of those. Salute, my friend. Please go and look at his channel. He will be coming back. He's playing some games at the moment. Don't blame him. With what's been on telly and everything just recently. Hopefully he'll be coming back and watching a load more films now. So, salute, and we'll move on to the next one. And the next one is Ian Hill, The Ramblings, who I do a collaboration with pretty much all of Wednesdays, but just recently we've had a couple of Thursdays put in, but that's only because of the World Cup. So I want you to know that things will be going back to normal. They'll be on a Wednesday. It will be at 8 o'clock. I think we're into the 117 era now of episodes that you can go back and look on. It's Ask Us Anything type questions. So don't feel like you're going to be alienated because it's just talking about films. Yes, the major topic is TV and films, but we do talk about other things. And I'm asked questions even this week. There was one on Spider-Man, so everything is mentioned in there. We even get to talk about food. We had a conversation not many weeks ago on rice puddings, believe it or not, and that lasted about 10 minutes. So great. And what a great guy Ian is. So we'll be talking about his channel in a bit, but please go like, subscribe. The details for most of these channels are in my description. Go and have a look. But let's see what Ian has said this week. He's put, "Hi Del Boy, I hope as always you and your mum are doing okay. I won't moan and complain about the weather. My lips are sealed. I'm saying nout." I wish I could, but it's in the news. What can I do? "Enjoyed our live stream on Thursday. We will be back to Wednesday at least until the Euros in 2 years' time. I've got over that now, the disappointment of England's performance. It seems to be something we experience in every tournament. It's the hope that keeps us going. Every year I'm the same with Leeds United, that we can stay in the Premiership. You and me both, and mine was Coventry going into the Premiership this year, so exciting times. I haven't watched quite as many films this week." Not surprising with the England games and stuff. I mean, you had one on Sunday, Monday morning. You had one on Wednesday. You had one on Saturday. I mean, how many? What? How can you do that if you're watching the sport? So it's understandable. So you haven't watched quite as many films this week. A highlight was revisiting a film I watch every year, Kramer versus Kramer, a 1979 film with Hoffman and Streep, and they give tremendous performances. It's not surprising the film won 5 Oscars. I continued going through the Hammer Mummy films with The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb from 1964. Again, it makes me appreciate having physical media. In the extras, always enjoy Hammer film expert Jonathan Rigby talks so knowledgeable about these films. Absolutely fantastic. 2 great films there. I've seen both of them. Kramer versus Kramer is one of those films that comes to mind for me because when we first bought our video recorder and therefore was going to rent VHS tapes, Kramer versus Kramer was one of those early ones that was on the shelf. And because of my age, we sat down and watched it. And to be quite honest, I thought it was boring. What the hell am I watching this for? I would find this boring on a Sunday afternoon if I was watching something. But it's one of those ones that as you get older, you appreciate it more. I'm not, a family man in particular. Like, say, I've a girlfriend, a wife, kiddies, that sort of thing. But over the years, I can now appreciate it more. The things that go through with a divorce and a kid in the middle, and all of the court stuff that's going on in regards to custody and all of that sort of stuff. So, yes, definitely deserving of its Oscars. Drama is quite well received by Oscars. But that one definitely stands out. And one of my fond memories, thinking back to the early rentals that my family saw when we got our video recorder. So, yeah, for definite. So you continue. So my question this week is, what films in your collection do you feel you could talk about in a knowledgeable and an enthusiastic way? It's my old chestnut again, isn't it? Where it talks about the Star Trek films, and in particular Star Trek the Motion Picture. I must have seen every extra, every documentary, every person that's tried to redo the special effects as a fan made, the making of the film, listened to the score millions of times, read the comic, read the novelization. It goes on and on and on. But I could say that probably quite a bit for the other Star Trek films as well. Less and less as we get into the next generation. But they were a big part of my life and something that I watched over and over again back in the day. And of course, I've gone through VHS and video CD and Laserdisc and DVD and all of those mediums, buying those films on all those different formats. And I would say I could probably talk enthusiastically and passionately and quite knowledgeably in regards to Alien, Blade Runner, most of the Ridley Scott early ones, Thelma and Louise even, less so the later ones with Ridley Scott, purely because I'm just behind with watching all sorts of different films. But I would say anything that sort of like stands out in my childhood that I've continued to buy to this very day, and I could mention things like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Young Frankenstein, Swallows and Amazons, the Railway Children, The Amazing Mr. Blunden, the Carry On films. See, all of those, they've been around me for years and years and years. I'm sure I mentioned Blade Runner, yeah. And so, yeah, it's ones that I have to, when I came out the film, I'm sure this has happened. I came out of Rocky films so in the zone that I ran home instead of walked, humming the tune Gonna Fly Now. Because I was in, like I said, I was in the zone, enthusiastic. So then when you get home, if in my later years when the internet was here, came along, I would research it. And then with the older films, I'd go to libraries and look things up. So those sort of films I can talk about for a long time. And then, of course, there are the bad stuff. What I consider to be, oh my God, it's so bad, it's funny, and I can bring them up. And we have great laughs and digs at me in Ian Hill's channel in regards to Condor Man, say, a film that I just don't like that film one bit. I was so disappointed with that film. And then TV series like Manimal. Oh, and I watch that every couple of years to remind me TV is not that bad, right? Purely because that TV series is bad. Do you know what I mean? I don't find redeeming features in Ian McCarthy-Dale's performance in Manimal. Oh, it's just atrocious. So that's the sort of thing that I can talk very knowledgeably about. And there are films that are not coming to mind because that's how my brain works at the moment. I'm pushing now for the opposite end of the spectrum, ones I couldn't talk too much. And there's more of those than there are ones that I could talk knowledgeably on. And that's what makes my hobby, my passion, so good. Because I've either forgotten a film or I've never discovered it yet. There's that. And that's why I keep going to my friends, and when they're doing their top films, the top films of the 50s, 60s, all of that sort of stuff, there may be a film in there I've never heard of, and you need to list it down and get round to watching it sometime. So there you go. And you end all the best to you and your mother, and have a reet grand time. And I will. Thank you so much. Absolutely marvellous. Thank you so much. And please, what a nice guy he is. Please go over, have a look, subscribe. Marvellous. And so we're moving on. And I've noticed the time. So talking enthusiastically, bloody hell. It's probably knocked this on a skew a little bit, but we move on to my friend Denny, and I'll try and read it out and just answer the question as good as I can, if there is one. He's put, "Hiya mate, again, not a lot to say this week. My work all the week was afternoon shifts, definitely kills any chance of doing anything. Now then, I dropped a question to your Discord about artificial intelligence. I know how much you love it." That's because we have these chats, and I say to him that, you know, basically I walk a line when it comes to AI, but I absolutely am disgusted by it being forced on me. I will say that. At work, I think it takes away creativity, and creativity, AI can have a great effect on, but I'd prefer it that we concentrated right now on number crunching, medical reasons, science reasons, all of that sort of stuff, than chat engines having big databases everywhere and all of that sort of stuff, which I think is just atrocious. So he said he dropped a question. So one comment it makes you that came out was, "It makes you lazy creativity." I'm not blessed with any artistic skills at all, but I have an imagination that AI can bring to life. Personally, I like a mix of traditional and artificial intelligence when designing. As an example, I'm cleaning up old crash and zap covers using both techniques, and posted on my Discord that you've probably seen, Del. Artificial intelligence has literally given me the tools to produce high resolution, colour cleaned and graded examples which can be shared with the community. Could the same comment about people being lazy be directed at a user using Photoshop, a video producing package, or should we all write our own software to say we're not being lazy and cutting corners? Literally, we are all use technology to the betterment of moving things forward and progressing, be it software or hardware. So people use a little artificial intelligence in their production, be it a thumbnail or the video itself. The quality of the production is in the person writing and producing to entertain everyone. That literally is it, wanting to entertain you. On the entertainment side, the physical 4K releases of The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad is looking absolutely fantastic. It's on the way and I'm looking forward to it, but the price is becoming ridiculous now to import. I'm hoping to watch Falling Down and Soylent Green this week from Arrow. Out of interest, those that won't watch anything AI are they going to stop collecting films on physical media as artificial intelligence is used in restoration these days? All valid stuff and all great debating subjects, which I've talked about AI a lot. So I've got no problems. When it comes to the question of Photoshop and AI, both are tools. Don't get me wrong. And I use Photoshop a lot. I've used AI rarely, but I can see its merits when I've needed to make something that was 4:3 into 69 or something like that, because you'd have to crop a lot or move things around, and or even be an artist yourself and draw the bits in that you would see that would not be part of it because the picture was in a 4:3 format in the first place. And when it comes to AI restoration, if we don't experiment now, then we won't get it correct. And films are now coming out that the restoration work would take years to do, and you could have it now. So I get it, because you do your experiments, you get it out there, it doesn't work, you learn from your mistakes, it comes out. But the biggest bugbear I've got is, even on YouTube, there's a little tick box when you upload that says, was AI used in anything to do with your video? For which I always tick no, because that's the truth. You can see here that I stop my recordings, pause my recordings. The pictures are usually a photograph with a text on it. Nothing fantastically spectacular. And when I'm doing my film ones, it's generally the cover art or clip art, you know, to make up a scene, a fun scene on something. And therefore, you don't need AI for that too much. But there have been some nightmare stories, you know, like with, say, like not the first Jaws, but Jaws 3 or Jaws 4 in particular, that they've looked and frozen a picture in time, looked at the background, and the faces that would have been there that you could see, AI has made them into looking like something out of Planet of the Apes. And my argument about that is, do I really care? The picture is moving so fast you don't even see it, that a still shouldn't be used to show that AI is really bad. But when AI is used bad is when things that are prominent that you can read, like writing on the wall, the writing on the wall is changed because the AI couldn't pick it up sharply enough for it to make that image sharp. It's actually guessed what the wording is and changed it. That's where I think it doesn't work. But this is where companies therefore shouldn't be culling our industry of technicians. Those should be used in quality control. And AI should be a tool to help, not replace. That's the word that I was looking for. So that's my sort of like feelings on it. I'm definitely looking forward to those films. Definitely agree with the importing thing. And I totally get the AI bit. And when it comes to Photoshop, yeah, just like AI, it's a tool. And I don't know anybody that's turning around and going, oh, I'm not going to watch this because Photoshop was used in the creation of this video. Nah, not going to happen. So I totally get it. And I think what AI does is, because it's mentioned every week, because it's in your face whenever you're going to Facebook or going to YouTube or anything like that, and it's now standardized in TV and cinema, that it's just got to be mentioned. Oh, I hated this, I hated that, I like this, I like that, and the debacle then goes on. But we're in that period where we're experimenting, and from an experimental point of view, some things will just drop by the wayside, and there you go. That's all you can really say about it all. But I definitely wouldn't stop buying a disc because AI was used, or watch something because AI was used. It all depends on how it was used, really. There you go. So my question this week: Bethesda have put out an announcement that Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas remasters are on the way, using the Unreal 5 engine. Do you plan to buy them, or do you think it's a little too late? Question mark. Do you think it's taken the mickey that it's been 15 years since we've waited for Elder Scrolls 6? And yeah, it is a little bit. And if they're funding Elder Scrolls 6's development based on remastering, I think that's wrong. It's just one of those things where I've played those two games, and a remaster I'll probably buy in a sale, but I wouldn't go out of my way to buy it day one. I'm just not that interested in getting those two titles day one to see what they're like. Now, if it was a game that was in my childhood or something that I was so engrossed in that I want to buy it, then of course it would. I mean, a perfect example would be, say, like Dungeon Keeper. You know, there have been many sort of like homages to it, and there have been quality of life upgrades to them where you can have it in 4K and zoom the map in and out and all of that sort of stuff. But what we're talking about with these remasters is they're going back, and they're not just doing the visuals, they're doing the sound and possibly changing the story a little bit. Maybe they'll add something in but not take it away. But you know how programmers love to tinker, and you know how much studios love to get their nose in and say, I want this adding into it because of my agenda. So there is that aspect of it as well. So I hope that answers that question. You then say, pass on my best to your mum, and we'll speak this week as I'm off until Friday night. That's brilliant. I'll make a note of that. We'll get that sorted. Fantastic. And thank you very much, Denny. You're a great mate. And thank you so much for commenting and trying to keep my channel alive. You're one of the greats in regards to that. Thank you so much. Salute to you. And we'll move on to Colin Jones, aka Ponder, person who loves to keep me on track. Love his channel. Such a great game player, but so knowledgeable in technology things, and he keeps his eyes and ears open for anything that scratches that itch for him. So that's brilliant. Let's see what he's put today. He's put, I pointed out about the weather to my daughter the other day. I also pointed out that we will see more of this for previously mentioned reasons. The latest heat wave wasn't so bad as the last and happened during my leave for a change. So I actually enjoyed it, but it's going to get worse, not better, of course. Absolutely. And Widdicombe was a hateful person, but murder is not the answer. You already know this, though. Yeah, I do. I wasn't a big fan. Maradona's cheaty goal was 1986. Yeah, like I said, I got dates wrong. For this reason, above all others, I want to see England get through against Argentina. Their cheating has been very visible this year too, according to the things I'm hearing. just got the result as I finished watching this blog, and well, yeah, because we now know what that result was. Hopefully your chair works for you when I get it. I hope so too. Fleas are difficult to get rid of, and none of the store-bought solutions work. The cat does have to be treated first with treatment from a vet or chemist. The flea bombs I found totally ineffective when I used them for my mother-in-law. Yeah, I've heard similar things. We used powder. I did get the stuff for killing the fleas on the cat first. It has to be done. There's no point not doing it that way. Especially if you've owned the cat, but ours is a stray, which you can say, no, you can't come in, which means you can treat it that other way first. But yeah, totally agree with everything that you've put there. Send in my regards to your mum as always, and I hope you get rid of those little parasites. So do I. It's impossible to beat Castle of Terror on the C64 because there was no way to harm the Count nor break the spear, which you needed to do to get the 290 points necessary to complete the game. That's very true. What I was actually getting at in there, and I'm sure you recognise this, was I never got to the end when I originally started to play it. When Mainmeister and I started to bring it up in conversations and it started to get into the conscious of things, you then find out that it was fixed as a bug on certain downloads that you can get, which means that you can enjoy it and finish it now. And that's because the end sequence was there, but you could never get to it. Doesn't mean it wasn't written in, which it was. So it's still classed to me as one of those go-to adventures that I'll play because of the nostalgia aspect of it all. But you're quite right with everything that you said. I am cutting down the language, but mild curses are fine, and I still let slip now and then on the stronger words. I'm sort of doing the same, unless I'm doing in my jokey funny mode in Ian Hill, The Ramblings, which they all recognise as me doing a persona. There is also something that I learnt the other day, that there is a setting in YouTube where the text, if you're reading this with text at the bottom, you can tick a box and it will scrutinise those words and not bring up the swear words in the text. If you do that, apparently you get more viewers. Don't know how that works. But there you go. That was one of the creative videos I saw a while back. Must have been 6 months ago. Question for you, you said. I'm pretty sure you're Marvel first and foremost, but what are your thoughts on the DC universe? I don't have bad things really to say. I was Marvel for all the reasons that I mentioned last time, which is it was sort of like these heroes live in your backyard. They're in the real world. Spider-Man could swing past your window because he lives in New York City, etc., etc. And of course, there's the soapbox aspect of it all. Now, Batman in the early days, Superman in the early days, they weren't really crossover events. They weren't singular stories. Superman I always found to be, well, he's indestructible. What's the point? And Batman was all mental anguish. But he was a billionaire. Do you see what I mean? Marvel's one seemed to be more, it could be the tramp that lives at the bottom of your street if you live in a city. All of that sort of stuff. So I loved Marvel for those reasons. What do I think about the DC universe? Just, it's great, but it's the unbelievable aspect of it. And also, one of its detriments to me is that it was around for 40 years before I was even born. So catching up with the lore of it all, hard. Where most of Marvel, people don't go back further than, say, I would say 1958. They do for certain stuff. Captain America is one. Submariner is another. The Human Torch is another. They go back in years. where the war was. So, but they exploded in 1961-62. So with DC, it's much harder, because if you want to know the lore, Wonder Woman goes back to the 40s, 50s, Superman 40s, Batman 40s, 30s, 40s, I think. So the lore you have to sort of like really keep a note on and know the key stories that have gone on in modern life that have rewritten it, because it's now canon. So DC's a harder one to follow. DC had so much luck and so much quality that Marvel didn't even get a look in from a live action or TV point of view until the 2000s. So should I limit my success to them because they've been around not that much compared to DC? Not necessarily. It's just that, yeah, Batman was a successful TV and film. Superman was a successful TV and film. Wonder Woman, from a certain aspect, TV, no film until the 2000s, and so forth and so forth. But they always tend to be playing against Marvel. You know, oh, will one better them? And if you've got a formula that's working, you come across as looking like an ass. And that's most of what my feelings are in regards to DC. They made the same mistakes as Marvel. They corrected their mistakes the same way as Marvel. And so from that point of view, if you're a big Marvel fan, you stick with Marvel. It's as simple as that. And DC, you recognize their strengths, their greatness. And that's what I like to do. I like to think of them as a powerhouse. And I've had great enjoyment reading many graphic novels, watching their films, the TV, etc. But not so much films of recent. And what I mean by recent is the last 6 to 8 years. Yeah. So I will say that. Thank you very much, Colin. He, as you know, he's got his own channel. Please go and look at it. Fantastic guy. Definitely worth a look. Then we've got Carl Todd, who has just put the word placeholder. So there is nothing to say here, but I appreciate the effort, Carl. Thank you very much, and I hope sometime you expand on what you were going to say. And the last comment is from Martroid. And he's talking a little bit about something that was in the last diary. It says, those little robots you were talking about, Del, they weren't Micronauts, were they? Baron, Kaza, or Force Commander, maybe? Question mark. Man, I absolutely loved those as a kid. And I did as well. And I haven't gone back to the video of Jonathan Ross for me to say, yeah, you're quite right. It was the Micronauts. I remember them being Japanese or Korean or Chinese. And I remember the packaging and how I loved to play them, and they felt welty and quality and all of that sort of stuff. So nice memories whenever I'm thinking about those. And that's the end of the shout outs. Thank you so much to one and all that did those. And we will be moving to watched on YouTube any moment now. So just bear with me. And I've checked on my mum, and she's okay, and she's been changed for this period of time that I'm in at the moment. So we move towards the end of this diary, which is the watched on YouTube bits. As you know, I watch quite a lot on YouTube. Don't blame it really when you consider what's on TV. And I usually break it down into 3 sections. Watched on YouTube is the first one. And as anybody who watches this regularly will know that there are 4 that I watch every week, and others that when they crop up, some of them become regular, but most of them are just those 4. So the first one is This Week in Retro. And they had 3 subjects this week. Head setting the high score. We have Uranium 235 at home and the A1200 Q&A. So it was quite interesting this week, although I already know a little bit about VR headsets, what they're doing, but they were talking about the VR headset being used as if you're in a arcade, because there are many ways that you can do this, because there are things like pinball games where they put you in a place where you think you're in a virtual sort of like pinball location. All the tables are mapped up. You walk up to them. When you say you want to play them, the screen changes and you're in front of a virtual pinball machine and you can play. And so there are other examples of this, tycoon type games, but there's one that's in development where you've got arcade machines. You walk past them and you can see the loop play of the attract screens, and then you can then actually play the games. Although when you're playing the games, I believe they're not at the moment virtual. There'll be like a screen in front of you and you're playing. Very good. You need a powerful PC to do it with. Generally, it's aimed at people with MetaQuest type stuff, with a link cable to a PC, and your PC must have high-end processors and graphics. And that's because the multitude of ROMs and the overload of the environment means that you really couldn't put that in the memory and the processor power of your headsets, not being that powerful enough yet. But there are always developments going on, and there is already talk of what the next Quest and other third-party headsets are coming out with. So I sort of knew that one. The A1200 Q&A, I saw all the videos of that a couple of weeks back. So there wasn't anything really brand spanking new, but it's always great to see them deliberate, and that's brilliant. Techmoan, he did a video this week called Wheel Free, an optical upgrade ? And that's because there are many of these record players that are stand-up type things where the record player goes in and it uses a needle and so forth. But there is this new one that's just come out called the Wheel Free. It replaces the Wheel 1 and 2, and it uses an optical cartridge. And this optical cartridge is under deliberation at the moment a lot, because the earlier versions picked up dust and made it, and because it's an optical method, picked it up as noise. Apparently that's now virtually gone as a thing. But this player was $3,000 for a record player now. But it was nice to see, nice to hear and watch him deliberate on it. And that's what made it an interesting watch for me. Then you got the Gadget Show, which did a video of the best tech of 2026 has been crowned. So these are more of those putting these tech that they've already done a little bit of a video on into one grouping and then crowning it the number one tech so far this year. But we're not at the end of 2026 yet, so see what I mean? I look at these things as going, you don't know this yet, but it was still fun to watch because it's tech and I love tech. And Chronologically Gaming, he did 2 videos this week. He not only carried on the 1982 games of that particular year, highlighting Birdie King in the arcades, which is a golf game with a trackball, but he filled in the backlog of 1976 by showing some games that can now be reviewed because they can be emulated, and he showed off Night Driver, which is one that I never saw in the arcades, believe it or not, but I have played under emulation and know of it, and it seemed very much to me like a really quite smooth looking game, but not one that I would be totally attracted to even back then, if you see what I mean. But that's just me. That's not about the gameplay in public who made that game such a fun experience to play. The next video is from a channel called Slide Bean, and this one was interesting because I don't like the title. And when you're looking at the information in the video, it's very much changing its perspective on depending on how you look at it. The video was called The Brilliant Scam of Cinematic Black Bars. Scam? Black bars? So you're going, right, he's going to be talking about screen ratios and all of that sort of stuff. Scam. Now, I don't know if they were trying to scam you. What you have to understand here is that cinema, in its very infancy, was a 4:3 square environment. Later on, the lenses changed. And even later on, after that, you actually recorded one piece of footage and could choose whether you wanted to show it in 4:3 or 16:9. There was a period of Hollywood time where the cinema was trying to survive and TV was becoming the norm, and they wanted more people to still go to the cinema. So, yes, they invented techniques like Technicolor and all of this sort of stuff, Vistavision, to make you sit on bums on seats, so that because if you watched it on a TV, you would get cropping. You would get bars at the top and the bottom, or they would zoom in and you can't see what's going on the left and right and all of that sort of stuff. All of that, very true. Scam? I don't think anybody was trying to scam anybody. And of course, widescreen TV came along much, much later, and it became a non-thing. But you, as a business, you're going to protect your interests. And I always thought that the cinema was a premium service and the TV was a more public service. And there, from that perspective, you watched more TV than you did cinema anyway, right? For the majority of people, and I will say that. So you have to look at these things and go, it's not really a scam. It's like saying I'm being scammed because I'm not going to the theatre to watch a play because I'm seeing it on TV. No. The theatre experience is different. The cinema experience is different than the home experience. And it still is now. But the borders are diminishing. And from that point of view, there's probably a lot now that are film collectors that don't go to the cinema at all. For whatever reasons. Could be medical. We have to look at these things and go, should you therefore alienate people because they're not going to the cinema because they're not paying their money? No. I mean, you could break your leg, you could all sorts of stuff. I'm sure there's many, many people that have joined a gym to lose weight, break their leg, still got to pay money for it, and all sorts of other obscure things that really are only minor what I'm talking about. But I don't look at it as a scam. That's the thing. They were protecting their interests, and cinema experience was different to home experience. Yeah. So there's that. But you will learn an awful lot in that video about ratios, how it all works, what anamorphic is, 16:9, 4:3, 2:3, 5:1, Vistavision, all of that sort of stuff. And it's a great sort of like little watch, to be quite honest. The next thing I watched was Brian's Man Cave. Now this was an interesting one. It cropped up and it wouldn't normally do, but it was part of the gaming alert. And the video was called Alien Abduction, A New Hero. That's a game, by the way, HERO, on the Atari 2600, or if you want to be inclined, the Atari VCS. Now, I was a big fan of the game Hero, but it wasn't because of the Atari 2600, although I have played it on that. I had it on the Commodore 64, and I loved it. and I did have an Atari 2600 or VCS, and I did play it on that before I got rid of my Atari VCS 2600, so I have played it. This is done by the same person who wrote Hero, and it's a different take on it. And I liked what I saw, although it looked fiddly in places, I will say that. But it's a cartridge that you can buy. I think you can buy it digitally for your emulators, and the video was very fun to watch. You can see the sort of mechanics behind it and why it is very, very similar to Hero, if not totally, if you see what I mean. I prefer Hero from what I saw, but there you go. That's just me. Nostalgia again coming in. Then there's another channel called Totally Awesome Films. This was quite interesting because it was talking about TV after I've just talked a little bit about ratios and films. It was a making of sort of like channel, and they were talking about the making of Mork and Mindy, Laverne and Shirley, and Happy Days, and they all lasted over an hour and talk about the background stuff that was going on, why they died, why they were at success, and arguments and writers stuff going on for those three spin-off series, those three series, and all of them being spin-offs of Happy Days. I watched Laverne and Shirley. I watched Happy Days. I watched Mork and Mindy. I've got Mork and Mindy as a DVD box set. I don't think I've got Laverne and Shirley, even though I remember loving it when I saw it. And Happy Days was just a happy memory for me. And you can still, watch all three of these shows on some type of satellite channel. And you can buy all of them on physical media. I know that much as well. But some of these people that were in these shows went on to be great directors. Ron Howard, Penny Marshall. Penny Marshall's dad was the person who wrote the episodes for these and created these three shows. So yeah, it was very interesting for me. Definitely worth a watch. And Oscars were on my mind this week, and this came up in the alert channel as well. There was Charlie Chaplin's honorary award at the 44th Oscars, and after 20 years, because it was 20 years, and then there's the Stan Laurel honorary award. Sort of go hand in hand a little bit. The Charlie Chaplin one is well known, but it's always great to see, because it's even in the Chaplin film. Charlie Chaplin was exiled from America, and he lived for years in Switzerland. This is all to do with the FBI and communism and all sorts of stuff, and the fact that they thought he'd committed crimes with for his wives or girlfriends because they were underage. But after 20 years, they gave him an honorary award, brought him back into the country. And it's a very, very moving thing to see, especially if you see it in Chaplin, because in Chaplin you see there's a sort of like a scene where he's watching his own creation and watching the audience watch the tramp, which was his character, and them laughing at these things, 50 years on from when they were made. And it must have been hard for him to come back into the country to pick up the award, but he did. And of course, it's well known that he died not long afterwards. So that was great. And Stan Laurel should have had an award earlier. But, it was nice that the Oscars did these honorary Oscars. It's such a shame. It goes on now that they're presenting these awards to after the never ever getting award when they were making the damn things. But I suppose it's luck of the draw. Maybe that their film may have been mentioned but lost out to somebody else or whatever. But I would say for quite a big chunk of them, they just shunned them because of the industry they were in, like comedy, science fiction, horror, that sort of thing. And they all went to, for reasons I don't agree with, like dramas made more money, got a ethnic background to them, that sort of stuff. A film is good because it's a good film, and it's good because of the best actors in them. And it doesn't matter about the subject matter. It's just, that's it for me. So, but that is, again, just me as an opinion on that. Then there was one called Retro Sack. That's right. This was interesting to me because it wholeheartedly stated what I was saying in a recent live with my friend Mainmeister, and the episode was called "Should This Be Commodore's Next Computer After the Ultimate C64?" And if anybody doesn't know what that means, is that Commodore went bust years ago, early 90s, about 92, 94, somewhere around there. There's been lots of little mini versions of these machines, as well as emulation and everything. But Commodore over the years brought out many 8-bit machines and 16-bit and 32-bit machines. And Commodore has recently been resurrected with the name brand Commodore. And they brought out this fantastic machine called the Ultimate C64, and their second project is going to be a phone, which I'm not that interested in, but I totally get why they're going down that route. And there's been speculation on, well, what should be their next machine? They've got these people that worked on these machines back in the day. They're coming out with these machines. What should be the next machine? And most people think it was going to be an Amiga, right? But I've always wholeheartedly said, I think the next machine should be the Commodore 128. Okay? It's not as bad as what people make it out to be. It was around for so much less of a time than the Commodore 64, but still sold nearly 10 million units. So it's that same expression, a light that shines twice as bright shines half as long, right? It sold 10 million units in half the time. And the Commodore 64, if you believe the numbers, is 17 million plus, but it ran from 82 to 92, 10 years. So basically, it was a success, but it was a failure as well. The Commodore 128 had its flaws, and the Commodore 64 had its flaws, and the Commodore 64 Ultimate is sort of like given quality of life enhancements with some added extras and fixes. Do the same for the Commodore 128 then. That's what I'm saying. And maybe the Commodore 128 homebrew market will explode as well, because it came out at the wrong time. It definitely did. The Amiga was released, although in its one of its most expensive formats and not sold in any great numbers. I had that machine, the A1000. And it was several years later that it turned into the behemoth that it was. So in my opinion is the Commodore 128 is well deserving of the Commodore 64 Ultimate treatment. And that's the end of what's watched on YouTube. That's just all of that is any opinions that you see there are just my own, by the way. And we move into the second section, which is film, TV and soundtrack YouTube, where I talk mostly about the films, TV channels, and sometimes music will crop up. The very top one being my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings, who does mostly TV, film, and reading material along that nature. So this week alone, he's done the top 5 action and adventure films 1984 to 1991, a Doctor Who review of The Web of Fear, which is one of my favourite Patrick Troughton stories, up there with Tomb of the Cybermen as far as I'm concerned. X-Files review season 6 episode 20, so we're getting to the end of season 6 now. What I have watched episode 29, which is all the stuff that he's watched this week. Some of it you will have heard earlier on. And Live With Me on Thursday, which was episode 116. So I was pretty much on the ball when I mentioned that number before. I think I said 170, but I weren't far off. Look at that. Total that all up. That's a video a day. Easy. And interesting stuff as well. So remember that. So go over there, have a look, subscribe if you like what you see. Absolutely fantastic guy. And like I say, he likes to collaborate and talk with people that are like-minded, which is why I'm always welcome according to him. And as many people as we can get in to talk about our favourite passions. So brilliant. Moving on, we've got Movie Salutator Ian Hill, and we move to Movie Collector. This one was a home cinema tour of a guy's house called Noel Pratt. And it goes along with that other one that we saw a couple of weeks ago, ABC, and so ABC Cinema. These are house conversions where their main living room or one of the houses, the rooms in the house, have been turned into cinema. And I tell you what, the sound systems and the picture quality, wow, they've done some amazing things. I'm in awe every time I see these things. So definitely go and have a little look at that one. Again, another one, a friend, Just Joshings, continues to do some reviews now and again. He deliberated something in this particular video. It's called Moana, and it's Disney's remake problem is the subtext for it. You may well know by now that Disney are going back over their old cartoons and turning them into film and TV stuff, live action, and there is a problem with it. They're very hit and miss. Go and watch Just Joshings. It'll explain it all to you. Absolutely marvellous. Then one of my recent ones I watched now is Blu-ray movies. Notice the plain words, Blu-ray, Blu-ray. He did a Milton Keynes gifts pickups and thanks, because last week, as I reported, he went to Milton Keynes, did a meetup. I'm not far from Milton Keynes, by the way. And obviously, while he was there, some gifts were exchanged. He wanted to say thanks for those. So very nice for him to do so, and just shows how sweet-natured he is. Marvellous. Then you got my guy that I go to for the horror, which is Mondo Chelovic Movies. Haven't seen him for a while because he does do sort of behind a paywall type environment, you know, in regards to Patreons and stuff. But he did a one for the masses, which was Evil Dead ranked, including 2026's Evil Dead Burn. So he ranked the Evil Dead films. I'm a big fan of the Evil Dead films, so that was brilliant to know his thoughts on those. And then the last film and TV stuff that I watched was all done by Commode. He's a critic, okay, and he used to do stuff on Radio 2. He did a Commode on Film podcast where they asked the question, has Mark officially become an old man? Because it's Mark Commode, that's his name, which was very fun and light-hearted, and I enjoyed that. And then he did his Commode and Mayo's Take, which is a review program that, like I say, used to be on BBC Radio 2. He reviewed this week The Odyssey, Synthetic Sincerity, and a box office top 10, which I'm sure by now will have had all of the box office 10, including Supergirl, which has been such a controversy this summer. So again, all good stuff. Definitely worth your watch. And we move to the last section, which is Gaming and Tech YouTube, which are mostly my friends that are on my Discord or my friend's Discord, which is Mainmeister. The first one is Down the Rabbit Hole. A good friend of mine from Canada, and he did a couple of videos, and one of the videos was called I liked No Man's Skies, Swarm Expedition, I think it's called. So there's a mission at the moment that's going on that's just come to an end called Swarm, and he wanted to explain why he liked it. No Man's Sky is an incredible program. If you haven't played that game, go do so. I've got it twice. I've got it once on the PC and I've got it on my PlayStation. Haven't got it on my Xbox. And I must admit, I love going back to it now and again. I must admit, I ought to go back and play it more. But I've been engrossed in other things, including help from my mum. And the last video he did was Tato's Alpine Ski on his GRS Bind Arcade little... It's not a handheld, but it's a little box. And it looks like an arcade cabinet. And because it utilises MAME and RetroArch, you can play games on it, rather than singular games that you can buy in this same format. So that was great. Fantastic. And I really enjoyed my time on Kevin's channel this week. Moving us ever onwards to Robert's Retro Gaming. And look at the amount of stuff he's done. My God. So we've got Dwarf Fortress Classic episode 46. Minecraft Play episode 202. Pico 8 gameplay called Hot Wax, which was brilliant. I really want to play that. C64 gameplay of Defender, which is Ian Gray's version of Defender for Interceptor Micros. Make your own opinion on whether you think that one's going to be good or not. The NES version of gameplay of Bionic Commando after he did the Atari ST the other day. Just to show you just how different games can be that come from the arcade and are then coming into your home, because they usually add little features, and that's definitely what's happened with Bionic Commando. And then he did some Atari 8-bit gameplay. Now this is machines like the Atari 400, the 800, XL, XE, you know, all of those machines. He did a couple of reviews. Winter Olympics, Crypt of the Plymbius, and Squid. Spelled SQOID. All very interesting. Loved it. Always something for me to watch every day. So please go and like and subscribe if you're so inclined to have a little look at his channel. Moving on, we've got a channel called Steve Still Plays Games. That's my friend Steve. He didn't do so much this week. In fact, it's totally empty, but he might have done some stuff on Twitch, which is why I mention him, because he does like to do broadcasts every now and again, and Twitch is starting to become the norm for him other than YouTube. I like both. I'm not a big Twitch fan, so if it's not on YouTube, I tend to find I don't know about it. But there we go. That's just me. And I've just got to go and check on something, and I'll be back in a moment. I do apologise for another break. So we just mentioned Steve, and I hope that he's doing some stuff on Twitch, and I'm going to be able to see some of his stuff very shortly. We're moving on now towards the end, and we've got my friend Colin Jones, aka Ponder, that we heard about earlier. He's done a couple of videos this week. They're mostly high score challenges. In fact, they both are. One is Tuber's high score challenge, which I'm just trying to read my own writing on it. I think it's called Esprade. Can't remember that one. It was very early on in the week. Yes, I can. Yes, that was good. And then Mainmeister's high score challenge, which was New Rally X, which is an oldish game. And of course, Rally X is one of those ones that I've played many, many times. In fact, I've played it in a challenge, but this one is New Rally X, so it's definitely worth your watch. I'm going to mention 20th Century Gaming now, although he hasn't done a live stream for a couple of weeks. He put out an announcement to say that very, very shortly he's going to do a stream of his Battle of the Zap 64 Sizzlers. So he did an announcement video mentioning the videos that people have voted for that say Zap 64 shouldn't have made these Sizzlers, they should have been gold medals. And he's going to play these games, and then he's going to crown one, I believe. If not, he's just going to play them, and they're brilliant games anyway. So that's fantastic. So look out for that in the next week or so. I should think that'll be coming out because everybody's voted now. But I think you've got time until he actually broadcasts to still cast your vote. That's because he's going to be doing it live when he plays them. And the last one we've got is Mainmeister. He did a live stream of an overview of DOS games to play on the Mister. I don't generally play PC games much anymore on the Mister. Ever since I got Exodus, I find that a much better way to play DOS games. However, I found out about PC game playing using the 486DX core on the Mister, and I downloaded a package and it was great. So that was a great video because it just shows you just how good the little Mister is at playing some of these games, including PC things, which you never thought you never think it would be able to do. He also did a Friday Waffle live with Bill Harbison, who's a sort of graphic designer. I think he worked for Ocean and a number of other companies. I think he worked for Imagine as well. And that was interesting. Always good to hear somebody else's views on things that are happening right now. What their pet hate game was and what their pet great game was, and their background story on them working in the industry. And it's just great to listen to a Friday Waffle anyway from my friend Alan, who's Mainmeister. And that therefore comes to the end of the main bulk of my diary. And just to go over what's come this week, which is not an awful lot, to be quite honest. In fact, it's one thing, and it has a story behind it. So I'll go to the overhead cam. Yeah, it's on. Brilliant. And this arrived this week, and it's taken weeks and weeks and weeks to get this. This is Avatar Fire and Ash, and it's the 4K Ultra HD, as you can see in the top left-hand corner. It's quite a nice looking one. Nothing spectacular in regards to the artwork. There's a conformity to the spine. The back looks quite nice. Lots of stuff on there. But I've told you this in other weeks where I ordered this and I got the 3D version through, but it said that they'd sent the 4K version. That's because I'd ordered both. So it didn't hurt me. But when they eventually did say that they were sending the 4K version, the same 3D version came through. Now that meant I had two 3Ds and no 4K. And I've got both because I've always bought both through this particular type of IP or franchise. And then when I looked at the forums, it seemed very much that Amazon got a faulty batch. They'd put all the stuff in the bin in their bins for distribution for the 4K in the 3D tray, and the 4K ones in the 3D tray. So every time I was they were supposed to be sending me the 4K one, I got the 3D one. But like anybody knows, when it comes to steelbooks, they don't make them in any great massive numbers, which meant that it's taken over 5 weeks to get this particular release. And if you look on other channels, you'll tend to find that they're going out of stock, which meant that I was under threat of having my collection not have both versions for each film, which meant my collection, I'd have had to have gone to the scalpers for no reason whatsoever. This is where I'm saying that some things are unacceptable to me. I had to send mine back and get a refund before they would send me the new one to get this released to me. And if I'd had the money, then of course I could do with the buying it and getting it while I'm waiting for the refund. But if you haven't got that money, then you've got over 60, 70 pounds floating around for one film. Not acceptable. So of course I had to wait for the refund to get the next one. And I'm just hand on, my heart, and it's continuing to beat that I actually got it. because, like I say, it's going out of print. So there was a little story behind that one. And that means we got to the end of this. Marvellous. I really enjoyed myself. Lots of things to discuss this week. Lots of opinions from me this week. That doesn't usually happen too much. I usually walk a line. But some things I'm passionate about and want to talk about, and I did. So I've hoped you enjoyed this. Thank you to anybody that has watched all the way to the end. Thank you. Do have a think about looking at the description and seeing some of my pals and friends and support them if you can. Absolutely marvellous. And I look forward to the next one, which is only, like I say, 7 days away, isn't it, really? So until next week, salute, thank you so much, and have a great one, and I hope it's not too hot for you. Bye-bye.